Hello and welcome to Real Watchers Movie Club. My name is Garrett.
And I'm Kevin.
And we are your hosts. Movie Club is the show where we pick a movie every week and discuss it just like a book club. On today's show, we're covering the final film in the original Star Wars trilogy, Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Our thoughts and more coming up on Movie Club. Released in 1983, Star Wars Episode 6 Return of the Jedi was directed by Richard Marquand and stars Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher. After rescuing Han Solo from Jabba the Hutt, the Rebels attempt to destroy the second Death Star while Luke struggles to help Darth Vader back from the dark side. It is currently ranked 93 on IMDb's Top 250 and currently has a 4.0 out of 5 on Letterboxd. It was nominated for 4 Oscars for Best Original Score, Best Art Direction, Best Sound, and Best Sound Effects Editing. It did win a Special Achievement Oscar for Visual Effects. Before we dive into this film, though, we do want to issue a spoiler warning. Most of you have probably seen this film, like we keep saying, but we will be discussing plot points, twists, revelations, and everything that happens in this movie, because it kind of came to a close with this one, so there's a lot that they reveal. But if you haven't seen the film yet, make sure you go ahead and watch it, and then come back here. It's available on Disney+. It's always going to be there, so you can watch it there if you want. But stay tuned to the end of the show to find out what movie we'll be watching next week, because it's not a Star Wars movie. Alrighty, Kevin. So we have the final of the original Star Wars trilogy, and obviously you'd seen this movie before, but I think with the others you said it had been a long time since you had seen it.
Yeah, it has been a long time. I mean, we know, well, I know kind of what happens in it, but I don't know how it goes in order pretty much.
Sure. This is obviously the final film in the trilogy, the big climactic conclusion that everyone was hoping for back in 1983. And they got it. This movie is, in fact, a climactic conclusion. But I'm interested to see, what are your kind of general thoughts before we talk about it a little bit more for this film?
I mean, it's a good film. I don't like the CGI in this film just because it kind of takes away from the movie. I feel like it's not the greatest, and it's very noticeable in this one a lot.
It is worth it to note, though, that the visual effects were added in like the 90s and 2000s. They weren't in the movie when it first came out.
Okay.
So that is worth it. Those are part of the special edition improvements, I guess you could say. So I think it's not really worth to critique the film based on those being there, because it wasn't a part of the original film. It's just part of the George Lucas's vision, if you want to think about it that way. But I'm kind of on the same note. I think it's a good film. When I was younger, this was my favorite of the three because it had the most battle scenes in it. And that's what I wanted to watch when I was a kid. And now as an adult, and kind of what I expect out of films and kind of a deep level of storytelling, there's certainly some great moments in this movie. I think that everything between Luke and Darth Vader is really great stuff. And the battle scenes are fantastic, particularly the space battle in this movie is incredible. But I think that this movie, and I guess we can kind of dive in a little bit. I think this movie starts the weakest out of, I think, any of the Star Wars movies except maybe Rise of Skywalker. I think that this it just starts on a weak note for me.
Now, I mean, I don't even remember the opening. What happened?
That's indicative of my critique there anyway. The opening of this movie has to do with Jabba the Hutt and everything at the palace and everything. Again, you get some fun moments, some iconic moments, but it's just not like the most interesting to me personally.
True. Yeah. I mean, that whole sequence, is it necessary? Yes, because they're getting Han back and getting it decryptonized and everything. But
kryptonized is
what,
you mean carbonite?
Carbonized.
Kryptonized is more like Superman. Hey, they're related. I don't know if any of you knew.
But it's just, it was there. I mean, we get Boba Fett. That's what we get from this.
We got a really chump way for Boba Fett to die is what we get, which they thankfully gave him some more stuff to do later. But it's just, I don't know, it's fun. I think that I think that it maybe in some ways it may have been a reaction. Maybe some people when Empire first came out thought it was a little too bleak.
Mhm.
Like it did end on a dark note with a twinge of hopefulness to it, but it was certainly a darker film.
Mhm.
And I think they kind of tried to not overcompensate, but compensate for that in this film. I think you did definitely get a little more of that fun, adventurous
Mhm.
aspect in it. And I do think that, you know, again, there is some fun to be had in the beginning, but I would say it goes on a little too long. Um, but
Mhm.
it is what it is. I think once we actually get the group back together, when Luke, Han, and Leia are all together again, is when the film outside of its battle scenes thrives. Is because the three of them are together,
Mhm.
which
Yeah.
is what we've been wanting to see since the original movie. You know,
Yeah, I felt like when I was watching this movie too, that when the movie started is when they're on the Ewok planet, and then that's when everything starts to build up for me. You get little action here, you get the game plan and everything, but that's when this movie really starts for me. Like again, I didn't remember the first part of this movie, so.
yeah. I mean, it is what it is. I think they do have to have the continuity from what's going on with the end of Empire. We got to go get Han, and then
Mhm.
that's got to be obviously a big part of your story because you got to explain how Han's back.
Yeah.
I mean, initially it was rumored. I don't know if it's true, but I know Harrison Ford thought that Han should have died in Empire Strikes Back, which he would get that later in the sequel trilogy. But you
Mhm.
know, I
I
think
kind of
that
liked how he died in the later trilogy, though. It was kind of a cool way. Well, not cool, but it's like
you're going to invite some interesting comments with that.
okay, but it's like well, I mean, we won't even talk about it because it's not on IMDb 250 or anything. But
Exactly. I mean, like
it's betrayal.
yeah,
It's we saw the betrayal that happened with son and father.
which
With
would have been
just
so much
like
better than just being executed by a mob boss that you owe money to.
yeah, yeah,
I just don't think that would have been
exactly.
interesting. If it would have been Darth Vader or something that did it, then maybe. But I don't know. Anyhow, back to this movie though, and not
Hmm.
speculating on what it could have been. Um, like, yeah, I think, but I would say, yeah, once you're right, like once they start knowing what they're going to do, heading towards Endor, that is when the movie really picks up. And I would say
Hmm.
the last maybe 45 minutes to an hour ish of this movie is where it's truly good.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily the most well shot of the three of them, too. I think it's pretty standard. I mean, you do get some iconic shots now, but it just, I don't know. It's still a good movie. It just doesn't add up to the first two for me.
No, and it doesn't. It's completing the story. That's what
Yeah.
this movie is. It's just okay, we're trying to get to the finish line with this movie. And that's how it felt. It's like, okay, it's very simple. We get our friend back, we plan of attack, and then it ends.
Yeah. And I think that, like I said, when we actually get to the stuff between Luke and Vader, and trying to get his father to become good again, to become Anakin again,
Hmm.
is truly like the heart and soul of this trilogy,
Yeah.
right? Is Luke going above and beyond for his father, who he knows still has good in him, even when everyone else has given up on him. Luke is there trying to bring him back, which is, it's a really well done piece of writing. Like
Hmm.
the arc, maybe not all the dialogue is that good, but the actual like the motivations and the characters are just so well done that by
Hmm.
this point you are you're rooting for Vader. Like, I mean, you like, people love Vader anyway, but like you're rooting for him to make the right choice, and then when he does, it's very cathartic.
The thing is, too, though, I would like to see some cracks in his armor during maybe the second movie or even in this movie. Be a little bit more hesitant, leaning towards the good side and not the dark side. That's just me. I didn't see any hesitancy. Kind of just flips a switch, and he feels like he needs to save his son.
I
But
think, again though, like we said last time though, I think there was a little bit of hesitancy in Empire. He could have just killed Luke. He's killed so many Jedi. He
that's
could have
true.
just killed Luke. He could have destroyed him. but he didn't. So I do think there is that little bit of hesitancy in thinking that he could turn him, right?
To the dark side, yeah.
And
But-
then I think, seeing Luke do the same exact thing for him could
But
be part of the catalyst.
Yeah, I would like to see it in this movie a little bit more, though, just to relay to, because some people might not have seen the second movie and then waited 5 years for this third movie, and they're like, "Oh, he just flipped a switch." They don't remember that he was hesitant.
I'm
in the
pretty
second
sure everyone saw the second movie before watching this, but
I know, but to the people who don't remember how hesitant he was when fighting Luke and just cutting off his arm instead of cutting off his head.
sure.
For me, if he shows a little bit more resilience talking to the Emperor and to be like, no, I can persuade him, but having like a little like, no, I can persuade him, like a little pause or something to make him really think about what he's saying.
Sure, and I think it definitely piles up through the movie. Maybe you don't see it as quickly as you'd like, but especially when like Luke surrenders himself and they're talking in that little gangway, and like Vader does that fatherly thing. He's like, "Oh, I see you built a new lightsaber." Like, that's something like you could hear any dad like, "I see you put together a new Lego set." Like, like trying to change the subject and just
like a small talk or something like that.
Yeah. It's the closest thing we get to small talk in like one of the mainline movies, like, "Oh, this is pretty well done," and I think I don't know, it's really well done in my opinion, especially in the last part of this movie. And then I'm glad that Vader makes the decision he does, and that he does. I wouldn't say he fully turns back to the light, but he makes the right decision after making so many wrong decisions. And I'm glad that he doesn't make it out, that he doesn't like switch to the light side, because like no one's gonna forgive him. Like no one's gonna be like, "Oh yeah, glad to have you on our side."
Those 4 planets you blew up, totally fine.
Yeah, like no one's gonna want him back. So like it wouldn't have worked anyway. I mean, not that anyone would really do anything to him because they couldn't, but like, it's much more profound. Like Luke, like he gets to die knowing that he did the right thing. And
even though he's still on the wrong side of the argument, pretty much, because he's not on the light side, but he did what was right with that in his heart for his son. Even though we still know he's a bad guy, but when he does it, you're like, oh, that was good of him, and that's what Luke always saw.
Luke, or he gets to die knowing that he did the right thing, and Luke gets to, and having redeemed himself in his son's eyes.
Yeah,
and I think that's much more powerful.
Yeah,
there is a Star Wars comic out there, like a what if he survived, and they put him in like all white armor with like a blue saber, and it's kind of cool looking, but it would not have worked in terms of like the film and then the kind of the tone and the themes that they go for. It just wouldn't have worked. So I think this was much the better way to handle it. And honestly, it gives us a pretty good end. I'm not gonna lie.
No, it's a. I mean, is it a happy ending? No, but it is a happy ending at the same time. Yes, he gets to redeem himself by being a good father.
And one of the things, actually, you did mention the CGI changes, and one of the things that I do actually like about the CGI changes with this movie is at the end of the movie when the Force Ghosts are there at the party with them. In the original film, it was just some actor that was like the same age as, or a little bit younger than Alec Guinness. So it looked like Anakin if he was.
Oh, okay.
And I love how they made it Anakin from the prequel trilogy, because that's when he was a Jedi at his height.
Yeah,
that's when he was truly the best he was.
See, I didn't know that. Yeah, I saw Anakin when he popped up on the screen. I'm like, oh, that's Anakin. Good job.
Yeah, like that's the Anakin we know, now. And so like they didn't have that before. You know, it's like they didn't have the Emperor before Episode 6, before this came out. So in the Empire, when the Empire shows up, or when the Emperor, shows up in a hologram, it didn't look like the Emperor in this movie. It looked like a completely different guy with glasses on. Like it was not the same. And so like changes like that are kind of nice after the fact because it
Yeah.
preserves some continuity. And I think that's one of the few changes. Actually, there's quite a few changes that I actually enjoy, but I think that's one of the better ones, which is odd because I don't like Hayden Christensen in the prequel trilogy. But like seeing him like just makes it feel in line with the rest of the saga.
Well, it makes it complete.
Connects it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But can we talk about I love the reveal of Darth Vader's face, taking off all of the suit of armor just to reveal an old pale face. He wasn't reconstructed like not Anakin, like Luke was. He was just, that is his pure form, and that's what he wanted to go with because it shows his war that he's been through.
Yeah, he is almost like a zombie being kept alive by the machinery in his suit, and you see that in the way that he looks. He's pale. He looks like a corpse, which essentially he is, because Anakin died in Revenge of the Sith so that Darth Vader could live. Yeah, and like that's one of the many, themes of Revenge of the Sith, and why it's one of the better, probably the best prequel movie actually. But you see that here, and it's that continuity that I guess George had known from the beginning.
It's crazy how he did these 3 movies and then had to backtrack on his other 3 movies, the prequels, but it lines up very good. Like it goes from point to point to point, and you can watch all the episodes in a row pretty much and understand it and not get lost in them.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing is like, you get setups in the prequel trilogy that pay off in the original trilogy. And you get setups in things that happen in the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy that happen in the sequel trilogy. And so it's all connected in a very wonderful way. And any show you watch or any like canon book or video game adds to the world. It doesn't like, you don't have to play Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order to understand, Revenge of the Sith or Empire Strikes Back or anything. Right? Like that's the way that it should be. Yeah. Which thankfully it is. Alrighty, well, we don't really have much else to talk about with this one, and so I guess we'll just go ahead and get into kind of our final thoughts and what we think. Kevin, you want to lead off this time?
Yeah, I'll lead off. So this movie was really, it ties it up in a nice little bow at the end. That's what I like to call this movie. I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5, and I liked it. I did like all the battle scenes. Who's not gonna like that? But it's just a great way to finish off a saga.
For sure. Yeah, I think it's a good film to end the saga. Not necessarily the best film in the franchise. But as for my review, I said, it's not as well made as the previous 2, I don't think, but Return of the Jedi still has some impactful moments. It's a lot of fun to watch, and especially its last hour. It's very climactic. It's very final. But I did give it a 79 out of 100 and a 3.5 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd. Again, not the best movie in the trilogy for me, but still a good ending. Like, it's not unsatisfactory. So the question now falls to you. What do you think of Return of the Jedi? We'd love to hear what you think down in the description down below, or the comments. Look at me messing that up. But we will be watching, because again, the Star Wars community can get a little toxic, so make sure you're being nice to each other down there. We are watching. Next week, we'll be watching the period drama There Will Be Blood. Make sure to watch it before next week so you are not spoiled. Thank you so much for watching yet again. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to us here on Real Watchers, and follow us everywhere on social media at Real Watchers. That's REEL Watchers. And until next time, make sure to keep your eyes on the screen.